They called me useless. In front of a billionaire. They shoved me aside, my own family, while they begged in broken English for a deal they didn't deserve. But what they didn't know is that I speak fluent Arabic, and when I spoke, everything stopped. He froze, and in the silence, he signed the $7 billion contract with me, not them. Hi, my name is Venora. And this is the story of how the people who should have protected me tried to erase me instead. But I was the one who buried them, in silence. The fluorescent lights above the polished mahogany table buzzed faintly, like they were tired of hearing the same voices say the same things over and over again. My heels clicked softly as I entered the conference room. Late, of course. Not because I was disorganized, but because I'd spent 10 extra minutes in the restroom, breathing, calming myself, practicing silence. Everyone was already seated. My father at the head of the table, adjusting his cufflinks like they were more important than the deal we were about to sign. Helena sat next to him, her lipstick flawless, eyes darting toward me with disapproval before I'd even taken a step in. To her right was Victor, second oldest, flipping through the proposal like he actually understood the numbers. On the opposite side sat Philip and Mona, twin whirlwinds of attitude and apathy. All five had shiny gold nameplates before them, like trophies earned for existing. And then there was my seat, bare, no name, tucked to the side, almost behind a potted plant, like it had been added at the last minute to satisfy some rule about inclusion. I stood there for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or walk out. No one noticed I was still standing. Or if they did, they didn't care enough to pause. I pulled out the chair quietly, sat down, and folded my hands on my lap like a good little girl who knew her place. The glass walls reflected everything: my siblings' polished faces, my father's rigid posture, and me, slightly out of frame, always out of frame. Just as I reached for the water glass in front of me, Helena leaned toward me without turning her head. Her lips barely moved. "Don't say anything today, Venora. Please, we can't afford another incident." I blinked at her. An incident? Last month, I'd asked one question, one simple, logical question, about the shipping costs in front of a potential partner. Apparently, that was enough to mark me as a liability. "I'm serious," she added, still staring ahead. "This deal is everything. Just smile and don't embarrass us." Smile. That word tasted like vinegar. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because disagreeing wasn't an option here. Not in this room, not in this family. The doors behind us opened, and our corporate legal advisor walked in, followed by the two translators and a junior analyst I didn't recognize. No one introduced me. Again. As everyone settled into position, the buzz in the room dropped an octave, notes shuffled, coffee cups clinked. The weight of the pending deal thickened the air like Texas humidity. Across the table, Victor shot me a glance and then looked away, smirking. He didn't need to say it. I already knew what he was thinking. "You're lucky to even be in the room." My gaze dropped to the folder in front of me. I wasn't listed as a key contact. I wasn't listed at all. Memories started pressing in. Birthdays where my name was skipped during the toast. Family meetings where I was asked to take notes but never speak. Years of being the extra, the accessory, the other one. At one Christmas dinner, I remember clearing plates while Helena pitched her latest real estate flip to our father. He'd nodded in approval, even suggested financing it. That same night, when I mentioned my MBA graduation, he said, "That's nice. But remember, degrees don't build empires, guts do." So here I was, the one with the degree, the one without a nameplate. The meeting officially began with a review of agenda points. Helena led confidently, as if she were the CEO, though she wasn't. My father still held that title, though he hadn't touched an operational task in years. Victor added color commentary now and then, most of it wrong, but no one corrected him. I watched the legal advisors nod along, occasionally correcting a term or clarifying a number. It was all very procedural. Safe. until Mona cracked a joke in poor taste about the foreign partner's name, mocking its length and sound. The room laughed. Even our father chuckled. I didn't, because it wasn't funny. It was ignorant, but I said nothing, because I had been told not to. I swallowed down my thoughts like I had so many times before. The room buzzed with arrogance, and all I could do was endure. Then, the doors opened again. Not politely. Not discreetly. They slammed. Every head turned. And in walked the man I had only seen on screens and headlines. Tall, dressed in a crisp navy suit. His eyes scanned the room like a weapon, sharp, assessing, and utterly unamused. The Arab investor, the billionaire. And he was pissed. His eyes landed on my father first, then Helena. He didn't offer his hand. Didn't smile. Instead, he barked something in Arabic, fast, low, furious. The translator scrambled, whispering quickly into my father's ear. "We have a problem," the advisor muttered. Everyone stiffened. Helena sat up straighter. Victor stopped flipping pages. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photo. It was a pen, a wooden one, simple, scratched, clearly old. He slammed the photo on the table. "Who touched my father's pen?" the translator said, voice tight. "Where is it?" Silence. Absolute suffocating silence. I looked around. Confusion. Panic. No one had an answer. But I did. Because I'd seen that pen. I knew where it was. And for the first time that day, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not shame, but something colder, stronger. Maybe it was clarity. Maybe it was the first crack in a dam. And just like that, silence shattered. The room crackled with heat, though the air conditioning hummed at full blast. The investor, Lucian, I'd learned from the documents, didn't sit. He stood tall, glaring across the room like a man betrayed by his own instincts. "Who took it? Who touched my father's pen?" he demanded. His accent was thick, but the fury behind his words didn't need translation. The translator stuttered, trying to keep up. My siblings froze. Mona blinked hard. Victor looked to Helena, then back at Lucian, trying to gauge the right expression. Philip scooted his chair back a few inches, like distance might protect him from responsibility. No one said a word. Helena cleared her throat, her voice sugary sweet. "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding." He cut her off with a single raised hand. "It was on the table. It is not now. This meeting does not continue until it returns." No one moved. My fingers curled under the table. I knew that pen. I had seen it 3 days ago on the reception desk, placed carelessly atop a pile of mail. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. A simple wooden pen, faded, worn at the edges, the kind of thing people lose without noticing. But he had noticed, and clearly, it wasn't just any pen. I shifted slightly in my seat. The chair let out a soft creak. Helena's eyes snapped to me like a trap. She mouthed one word. "Quiet." I looked away. I wasn't stupid. I knew what she thought of me. The baby of the family, the one who got a scholarship instead of building something real. The one who always asked questions, the one who wouldn't just shut up and smile. But I kept my mouth shut, because if I said something, I'd be blamed, again. For meddling, for ruining, for trying to prove I was smarter than them. Lucian turned to our father, who stood now, hands slightly raised in defense. "My son brought that pen from Cairo," he said. "It belonged to my father." "It is the only thing I have from him." I felt my chest tighten. Still, no one moved. No one confessed. No one admitted they'd even seen the damn thing. And so, they pivoted, not toward honesty, but away from me. "Venora," Helena said suddenly, her voice cutting across the room like glass. I turned toward her. "Can you step outside for a moment?" Every set of eyes turned with hers, including Lucien's. My jaw clenched. "Why?" Helena smiled, thin and forced. Just for a moment. We need space to handle this. I hesitated. But I didn't. Please, she said, with a tone that made clear it wasn't a request. I stood. My chair scraped loudly across the floor, louder than it should have, like it wanted to scream for me. I walked toward the door, slow and measured. No one spoke. The silence was its own judgment. Out in the hallway, the door shut behind me like a final word. The hall was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that made you feel like a ghost in your own house. I leaned against the wall, staring at the closed door, my thoughts buzzing louder than the meeting inside. How many times had this happened before? How many dinners where I was asked to take pictures instead of being in them? How many decisions made without me? Vacations planned, investments chosen, businesses named, always by them, for them, always excluding me. Footsteps echoed down the hall. One of the interns, someone I didn't recognize, walked past, gave me a glance, then kept going without a word. Not even a nod, like I was part of the furniture. Or worse, like I wasn't supposed to be there at all. I looked down at my shoes. They were polished. I'd chosen them carefully this morning, hoping today would be different. Stupid, really. The hallway was cold. The vents hummed. And through the wall, I could barely make out the muffled murmur of voices rising and falling. I wondered what lie they were spinning in there. Maybe they were blaming an assistant, or arguing over whether to just deny it entirely. But one thing I knew for sure, they were doing it without me. The door opened. Helena stepped out. Her hair was still perfect, her lipstick untouched. Her eyes, though, were sharp, cold steel behind a pretty face. "Stay out here," she said, voice low but firm. "Don't ruin this for us." I didn't respond. She paused. "He's already furious. He doesn't need more confusion." I could feel my fingers tingling, not from fear, but from something else. A low, rising hum of something old and angry. The kind of emotion you don't cry about. The kind that grows sharp edges. She stepped back inside without waiting for my answer. The door clicked shut. I stood still, frozen, but not numb. Something inside me shifted. Again. Then I looked up, and through the glass pane set in the door, I saw him. Lucien. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't even looking at Helena anymore. He was looking at me. His gaze didn't flinch. It didn't scan past. It landed on me and stayed. There was something in his expression, curiosity maybe, or doubt, or suspicion. His eyes stayed on me longer than anyone else's, and the room suddenly felt smaller. That look, sharp but searching, wasn't just anger. It was as if he were trying to place me, to decide whether I belonged in the category of enemy or ally. I held my breath, waiting for someone to speak, but the only sound was the ticking of the conference room clock. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. Standing in the hallway gave me an odd angle into the room. The glass panel let me see parts of the table, Helena's tense posture, my father's clenched jaw. Their voices were hushed, then rose and dipped again. I could only catch fragments. Pen, valuable, trust, over and over like a broken chorus. Then I noticed it. Something small, almost invisible. A faint scuff on the gray carpet right by the doorframe, like something had been dragged or fallen. My heart thudded. It was nothing more than a dark smear, but it was fresh. And it was exactly where one of the staff had carried in files earlier. I bent slightly, peering closer. "It might have rolled under," I whispered to myself. "This could help. This could matter." I pushed the door open gently, only enough to lean my head inside. "I think I see—" Helena's hand shot up without turning. "Not now. Don't start," she hissed, her tone slicing through my words before they even left my mouth. I froze in the doorway. All their faces turned to me for an instant. Mona's brows arched, Victor's lips curled. Even Lucian's gaze flicked over me again, unreadable. I straightened up slowly, swallowing the impulse to snap back. This was how it always went. I'd notice something, bring it up, and get swatted away like a fly. I pulled the door closed again, my pulse beating against my ribs. Through the wood, the voices resumed, louder now. I could hear Helena's clipped cadence, my father's measured tone, the translator's struggling attempts to keep up with Lucien's quick Arabic. My palms itched. I wanted to push back in, to show them the scuff on the carpet, to tell them the pen could still be nearby. Instead, I stayed where I was, staring at the floor until the pattern blurred. The door opened again, but this time it wasn't Helena. It was Uncle Ray, technically my father's cousin, but always around enough to play the part of critic. He leaned into the hall, eyes narrowed. "You," he said, jabbing a finger toward me. "You're always poking where you don't belong. Maybe you took it." The words landed like a slap. I blinked at him, stunned. "What?" He shrugged, lips curling. "Wouldn't be the first time you tried to prove how clever you are. Always sneaking around, acting like you're better than the rest of us." "I didn't," I started, but my voice caught. I thought of Helena's warning. "Don't ruin this." "Don't speak." Ray tilted his head, smirking. "Why else would she be standing out here instead of in there? Guilt's written all over her." My throat burned. I wanted to say everything at once, that I hadn't touched the pen, that I had a clue where it went, that accusing me was a lazy way to protect their own mess. But if I spoke, I'd be feeding their narrative, the outsider, the troublemaker. Inside, Lucien's voice rose, sharp and impatient. He said something in Arabic that made the translator pale. The family's words spilled over one another, English and half-English, apologizing, pleading. The scene had turned into a scramble, just as messy as I had predicted. And still, somehow, I was the one painted guilty. Helena appeared at the door, catching the tail end of Ray's accusation. Her eyes flicked between us, and for a second I saw a glimmer of panic cross her face. Not for me, for the deal, for their image. "Stay put, Venora," she said, softer, but no less firm. "Don't make this harder than it already is." I stared at her. "You think I took it?" Her lips pressed into a line. She didn't answer. She just shut the door again, leaving me with Ray's smug look and the weight of unspoken blame. I turned away from the glass, my fists curling at my sides. The hallway stretched ahead, quiet and sterile, but inside me it was anything but quiet. It was a storm. Memories of school plays where they forgot to pick me up, of being left out of family photos, of every time telling the truth made me the villain. My mind churned with a single thought. I could clear my name in seconds. I could walk in there, speak in Lucien's own language, point to the carpet, and end this farce. But clearing my name would mean exposing them. It would mean tearing open the curtain on their incompetence, their arrogance, their carelessness, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. I stayed silent, the noise from the conference room muffled but urgent. Lucien's voice cut through again, sharper now, followed by a heavy thud, his palm striking the table. The sound echoed out into the hall like a gunshot, and everyone's voices dropped to nothing. Except mine. The one screaming inside me. I didn't even realize I had stepped forward until I felt Helena's hand clamp around my arm. Her fingers dug into my sleeve, yanking me back like I was a child about to walk into traffic. Her whisper was sharp and low, just for me. Don't even think about it." Lucien had slammed his hand on the table again, his eyes wild now, the rage boiling in him almost a physical thing. His voice shot across the room like a whip. Harsh Arabic, too quick for the translator to catch up. My father stammered, "Please, Mr. Lucien. The pen, we will look again, maybe it was dropped." "I'm not here for excuses," Lucien snapped in accented English, cold and clipped. "That pen was my father's. It is not replaceable. One of you touched it. And there it was, the crack widening. Helena didn't release my arm. She just leaned in and muttered, "This isn't your place, Venora. Stay quiet." But I couldn't ignore what I saw. That scuff on the carpet. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, it had rolled beneath the buffet table or behind one of the sleek white chairs. "I think I might know," I tried again. "Enough," Helena said louder this time. Lucien looked up sharply at the sound, his eyes flicking to me. But it wasn't his voice that cut me down next. It was Victor, my cousin. "She's useless. Don't bother with her." Just like that. Flat. Final. Like I wasn't even in the room. There was a beat of silence, and then Mona added, "She's just our assistant. She's not involved in the business." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not like a scream. More like glass beneath thick carpet. Quiet, icy, permanent. I turned to Mona, who once cried at my high school graduation and called me her smart little girl. Her eyes didn't even meet mine now. Victor gave a dry laugh, trying to lighten the air. "She's the kind of girl who loses her car keys in her own purse, Lucien." "She couldn't have stolen anything. Don't worry." I was still standing there, breathing, feeling everything. Then it happened. Helena shoved me. It wasn't hard, but it didn't have to be. Her hand hit my shoulder, nudging me toward the hallway door like I was some stray dog she needed to usher out of a restaurant. I stumbled back, catching myself on the doorframe. "Venora, just wait outside," she hissed. I steadied myself and looked up, but no one in the room looked back. They had turned their focus back to Lucien, back to salvaging the mess. Their priority wasn't truth, it was containment. I stood in the doorway again, like furniture no one knew what to do with. "She's not family, really," someone said. I couldn't tell who. The words came out like static. Not family. After everything. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. With tension. With everything I wanted to say and couldn't. With the heat rising in my chest and the cold washing over my hands. I wasn't just humiliated, I was erased. From where I stood, I watched the people I shared birthdays and funerals with twist themselves into apologies. They tripped over phrases in English they barely understood, stumbled through half-remembered business terms, promising everything but offering nothing. Lucien didn't say a word for a long time. He just looked. Not at them. At me. His gaze was steady, sharp. His jaw was tense. His hand rested still on the polished table like a blade waiting to be picked up again. He didn't speak, but he didn't turn away either. And in that look, I felt something shift. For the first time, I didn't feel like a background shadow. I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not understood, not embraced, but acknowledged. His eyes didn't leave me, and in them, I saw something my family didn't. Suspicion mixed with curiosity. It was quiet, almost painfully so, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. My back still pressed lightly against the doorframe where Helena had shoved me earlier, like a broom someone left in the way. The shame hadn't settled yet. It hovered, ready to break me. But then I noticed Lucien's stare. Not one of anger anymore, but something else. He was thinking. And that terrified my family. Helena, always the loudest when she was losing control, stepped forward in her trademark heels that clicked too sharply against the polished floor. "Please, Mr. Al-Rashid," she said with an overdone smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let us sort this out for you. My father entrusted me with this entire deal. I assure you we'll resolve the issue." He didn't answer her. He didn't even blink. Then Anton, my cousin, smug, always in Helena's shadow, always desperate to shine, leaned in with forced confidence. "Sir, if it makes you more comfortable, I'll personally take over. I've managed our European accounts for years. We've never had a complaint." They were scrambling, rearranging chairs in a burning house. I watched Helena shoot him a glare. He'd jumped ahead of her script, and she didn't like it. But she didn't correct him either. Anything to keep the power in the bloodline, except my part of it. I wasn't even asked to sit. I stood there, like a misplaced coat rack, watching them speak over me like I wasn't real. When you're called useless enough times, I thought, you start to wonder if maybe it's true. Lucienne finally spoke, but not to them. "Where's the girl from the door?" My stomach dropped. My pulse quickened. Helena's head snapped toward me so fast her earrings clinked against her jaw. "She's nobody," she said too quickly. "She doesn't speak for the company." Then, as if she hadn't just dismissed me in front of a billionaire, she smiled sweetly and added, "She's my younger sister." Doesn't really understand these things. The room went cold. Lucien didn't respond right away. He turned, walked slowly toward the long table, and picked up a pen. Not his. Just some cheap promotional thing with our company logo. He turned it over in his hand like it had insulted him. Then he looked up. "Everyone but her. Sit." The silence that followed wasn't respectful. It was heavy, confused, awkward. Helena laughed nervously, assuming she had misunderstood. "You mean everyone including her, yes?" He didn't blink. "No." Anton, with his trademark cowardice, moved first. He sat without a word, fixing his tie. Darius, our uncle, followed. Then the rest. Helena stood frozen, unsure whether disobedience would cost her more than the humiliation of complying. She sat. I stood still, unsure what part I was supposed to play now. Lucien pulled out the chair closest to him, mine from earlier, the one with no nameplate, and looked at me. There it was again. That look. I crossed the room slowly. I could feel every pair of eyes drilling into my back like they wanted to peel away my skin. My footsteps echoed louder than they should have. When I reached the chair, Lucien didn't say anything. He just nodded once. I sat. And in that moment I realized I hadn't disappeared. I'd been erased. Intentionally. Deliberately. Helena leaned over to Anton, just enough for me to hear, and muttered under her breath, "She better not screw this up." Then louder for the room, "Let's begin." They launched into damage control, talking over each other, justifying, explaining, spinning. Helena even made a show of pulling out a folder of contingency plans, like she'd expected this. Her voice was syrupy but brittle. I said nothing. There was a moment, barely a second, when I considered walking out, not storming out, just quietly leaving, letting them have what they wanted, me gone, forgotten. Maybe that would keep the peace. But then Helena said something she didn't realize Lucien would understand. "She's pathetic. He'll never look twice at her." She'd said it to Anton, who smirked, nodded, and whispered something back I didn't catch. But Lucien heard. His eyes flicked toward her, then back to me, and there it was again. He wasn't curious anymore. He was calculating. That's when it hit me. My silence wasn't failure. It was strategy. They had trained me all these years to disappear. Stay quiet at dinners. Be agreeable at holidays. Smile politely at decisions I never made. They called it grace. They called it knowing my place. But what they'd really done was make me invisible until they no longer noticed I was still there. And now they were scared of what I might say. Lucien leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Tell me," he said without looking away from me. "Who speaks for this company?" Helena jumped in like a shot. "We do. I do. The executive team. We've prepared." He held up a hand. "I asked her." The room went silent again. I didn't know if I was supposed to speak. If I said the wrong thing, I'd confirm every cruel word they'd ever muttered. If I said nothing, I'd prove them right by default. So I did what none of them expected. I met his gaze and said, "Nothing. Not yet." I just held his eyes, and I watched a billionaire blink first. I had been trained to disappear, but what they forgot, what I almost forgot, is that silence can sharpen into a blade. They mistook it for weakness. They always had. But today, maybe for the first time in my life, I didn't. After Lucian left, the energy in the room didn't settle. It collapsed, like air being sucked out, leaving nothing but dust and bad intentions behind. I didn't move. I sat still in the same chair, unsure if I was supposed to leave or stay invisible like they preferred. But nobody told me anything, not even Helena. Her voice had lowered to a hush, her polished tone cracking at the edges as she leaned over to Anton. "We need to fix this. She's already rattled him." They thought I couldn't hear. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't do anything with it even if I did. That was always the safest bet in this family. Count on Venora to stay quiet. I rose without a sound, collected my notepad like I was simply tidying up, and slipped out into the hallway. But I didn't go far. I stopped just around the corner, where the shadows stretched long against the wall, and the only light came from the flickering sconce above the emergency exit sign. The glass conference room door didn't close all the way. It rarely did. And tonight, that flaw worked in my favor. Inside, voices dropped to conspiratorial tones, sharp, clipped, desperate. "If she speaks again," Helena said, her voice like ice cracking on a lake, "we'll make sure Lucian never believes her." "Can't believe he even noticed her," Anton scoffed. "He's probably just humoring her. Let's redirect fast. Play it clean." "No," came Darius's voice, slow, heavier. "We need to be more direct. If she gets too bold, we'll flip it. Blame the pen on her." A silence followed. Even from where I stood, I could feel it shift from casual cruelty to something deeper. Something planned. Anton chuckled, low and mean. "We tell him she stole it. Frame it as some weird emotional play. Lucien doesn't trust people. He trusts stories, objects, symbols. That pen meant something. If we connect her to its disappearance..." "She's gone," Helena finished. "Out of the picture." I didn't realize I'd pressed my back flat against the wall until I felt the cool drywall through my blouse. So that was their plan. Not just to edge me out. They were willing to destroy me completely, all to keep control of something they never truly built, only inherited. A title, a company, a story they kept rewriting without me in it. My ears were ringing, not from panic, but from rage. Controlled, quiet, bone-deep rage. I hadn't felt that kind of heat since I was a teenager, blamed for the shattered vase at Grandma's dinner table, even though I'd been in the backyard when it broke. Once a scapegoat, always a scapegoat. Unless I decide otherwise. I backed away slowly, heel to toe, careful not to let the floor creak. I passed the janitor's cart near the side entrance, nodded silently at the custodian, and made my way to the outer office windows. It was late. The city outside had gone soft, streetlights hazy in the night air, cars gliding past like ghosts. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass, not just my face, my whole outline, slight, unassuming, easy to ignore, but not anymore. "They want to erase me," I whispered to my own reflection. "Let them try." I straightened my shoulders. The glass caught the movement, but it didn't quite look like me, not the me they thought they knew. This version had lines of fire in her posture. I've carried their lies my whole life, but this time I'm the one keeping score. And if they thought I wouldn't fight, they were about to discover how dangerous my silence could be. I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't need to. The kind of fire that had started inside me didn't run on rest. It ran on memory, and I had decades of it. By morning, I wasn't tired. I was ready. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and old coffee, same as every morning, but everything else felt off. Maybe it was me that had shifted. I walked through the front doors of the Houston office with a kind of focus I hadn't known I had. My heels tapped sharp against the marble floor, steady, intentional. No hesitation, no detours. Outside the boardroom, the usual nervous energy buzzed, assistants double-checking notes, interns pretending to be invisible. But inside that glass room, the air held something tighter, more brittle. Lucian was already seated, calm, still, like a lion resting, but fully awake. I opened the door and stepped in without pause. "Sabah al-Khair," I said quietly, meeting his gaze. "Good morning." Lucian nodded once. "Sabah al-Noor." His voice was low, unreadable, but it landed with weight. I walked to the far side of the table, my usual spot, the one closest to the wall, the one where nobody looked. But I didn't sit. I stood there, upright. I didn't need a seat to belong. Helena's neck stiffened before she even turned to look at me. Anton blinked like I'd just strolled in wearing a clown suit. Darius exhaled sharply through his nose, already annoyed. Lucien, though, he looked directly at me. No confusion, no dismissal, just presence. Helena's voice cut across the table. "She has no authority to be here." I didn't flinch. "Funny," I replied, calm as ever. "You weren't complaining when I worked nights to fix the contract errors." Silence. Not even a shuffle of paper. My words hung in the room like smoke. Anton was the first to recover. He slapped his hand on the table, eyes narrowing. "You call that fixing? You added footnotes. You corrected formatting." I reached into my folder and placed a neat stack of documents on the table. Contracts, financial breakdowns, a clause that had saved the company nearly $2 million last quarter, all traced to the quiet notes I'd left in the margins. Lucien slid the folder toward him and began flipping through the pages with deliberate focus. I didn't speak. I let the silence do its job. Helena leaned forward, her voice sharper now. "You think paper will save you? You think this little portfolio makes you important?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're still nothing without us." My chest rose, slowly. I could feel my heart thudding, strong, not scared. "For years," I said quietly, "I thought silence meant weakness." My gaze didn't move from Helena's face. I was wrong. Silence is choosing the moment to speak, and that moment is almost here. Lucien looked up from the pages. He didn't say a word, but he didn't look at Helena, or Anton, or Darius. He looked at me. I didn't look away. The rest of the meeting blurred into background noise. Voices layered over voices, excuses, projections, rehearsed professionalism, masking open desperation. But the core had shifted, and everyone felt it. Afterward, the family filed out of the boardroom like shadows fading at sunrise, talking louder than necessary, pretending nothing had cracked. But cracks don't go away just because you talk over them. I stayed behind, gathering my things slowly. Lucien remained seated, still thumbing through the file I'd handed him. He didn't speak, but when I stood to leave, he looked up and said, "You're Arabic. It's quite refined." I paused. "My mother taught me. She passed it on the way her father taught her." He nodded, thoughtful. "A woman who passes language passes power." I didn't smile, but my throat tightened in a way that reminded me how rarely I'd been seen. When I stepped into the hallway, Helena was waiting. Her arms crossed, her face tight. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said. "No," I replied, brushing past her. "I'm finally playing it all." The elevator dinged. I didn't wait for her answer. That afternoon, I worked alone in my small office, tucked between the accounting and archive rooms. Nothing grand. The light flickered every few minutes. There was a draft under the window, but for the first time in years, I felt like the space belonged to me. I reread the emails I'd sent over the years, corrections, insights, data pulls, all ignored, all signed with my name. Now I printed them, each one, compiled, labeled, dated. I didn't plan to wave them in anyone's face, but when the storm broke, and I knew it would, they'd be ready. And none of them would be ready for where it landed. By the time the afternoon sun started slicing through the blinds of the boardroom, I knew it was coming. The buildup was too sharp, the energy too coiled. Every time Helena walked past me that day, she had a new whisper to hand off to Anton or Darius. They thought they were slick, thought I was still that girl who kept her head down and didn't listen. But I'd stopped looking at their feet. I was watching their shadows. Lucien arrived 15 minutes early. That alone said everything. He was dressed as meticulously as ever. Tailored navy suit, no tie today, but still composed like a man who could fire a dozen people with a glance. He didn't say much as he walked in, just gave a small nod, and his eyes scanned the room. They lingered on me for half a second longer than the others, long enough to make Helena's jaw tighten. I took my seat quietly. I didn't need to posture or demand attention. My presence was enough. Helena struck first. She always did. "We appreciate you making time again, Mr. Al-Rashid," she said smoothly, setting a thick folder in front of him. "Before we continue, we felt it was necessary to bring a few discrepancies to your attention." Lucien didn't respond. He just opened the folder. I didn't look down. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was inside. Fabricated balance sheets, subtly manipulated projections, all conveniently pinned to me. Helena's specialty, lies dressed in spreadsheets. Darius leaned in, voice solemn. "We discovered several issues in recent days, financial oversights linked to Venora's accounts. We believe she's overwhelmed. She's been known to rush through numbers." Anton added, "Her work ethic isn't the issue, it's her lack of experience under pressure. We're trying to contain the damage before it affects our larger agreements." It was almost funny. Almost. I stayed still. I didn't blink. Lucien's brow furrowed slightly, but he kept flipping through the pages. His fingers moved slowly, like he wasn't reading to understand, but waiting to see who would crack first. They expected me to argue, to panic, to interrupt. Instead, I reached into my briefcase and gently pulled out a separate folder, thinner, cleaner. I slid it across the table without a word. Lucien paused, then took it. Inside were the original contracts, the real ledgers, all in my handwriting, clearly marked with my initials, timestamps, even the server trails confirming their authenticity. Every note I'd ever left, every correction I made while they were off drinking wine in the boardroom or jetting off to emergency golf retreats. Lucien looked between the two folders, then back at the family. Still, I said nothing. Finally, I turned toward him, and in Arabic I spoke, slow and measured. "Al-Kadib la yamhu al-Hakika, inama yafdah an-nafs." A lie does not erase the truth. It only reveals the liar. The room didn't just go quiet, it stopped breathing. Helena's face flushed a dangerous red. Anton shifted uncomfortably. Darius opened his mouth and then shut it again. Lucien leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His expression unreadable, but something flickered. Not confusion, recognition. Then Anton snapped, "This is insane! She's destroying us with theatrics!" I turned to him, calm. "No," I said. "You destroyed yourselves the day you decided I was disposable. This isn't revenge. This is accountability." I reached into my purse, slowly, and placed something gently on the center of the table. An old wooden pen, worn, simple. The gold filigree around the cap barely visible now from years of use, but the symbol, the story it carried, was unmistakable. Lucien's eyes locked onto it instantly. A sharp breath caught in his throat, though he tried to cover it. His voice dropped lower than before. "Where did you get this?" "I found it," I said quietly. "The day of our first meeting. It had rolled under the corner table, behind the water cart. No one noticed. I didn't want to return it until the timing was right. He looked at me long and hard, not with suspicion, but something closer to reverence. That pen, he said, belonged to my father. He signed every contract with it until the day he died. It was never about its value. It was him. I nodded. Then you understand why I waited. Another silence fell, but this one wasn't mine to fill. It was theirs. Lucien picked up the pen slowly, examined it. Then, in one fluid motion, he pulled a new document from his case and placed it in front of him. A new agreement. The $7 billion deal, signed, sealed, except for one signature. He twisted the pen open. "Miss Venora," he said evenly, "would you be so kind as to witness this?" I walked over, calm, steady. And when I signed beneath his name, my hand didn't shake. He looked at the others, Helena, Anton, Darius, one by one. "The rest of you," he said coolly, "may excuse yourselves. We're done here." No screaming, no slamming doors, just silence. Helena rose first, stiff as a statue. She didn't look at me. Anton muttered something under his breath, but even he knew it was over. Darius followed, slower, like he hadn't yet accepted what had just happened. And then it was just me and Lucien. He studied me for a long moment. "You speak like someone raised to stay quiet," he said. I smiled faintly. I was, but I listened well. He gave a single, respectful nod. When I left the boardroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. The silence I once feared became the silence that buried them. And after Lucien walked out, leaving behind a signed contract and a shattered illusion of who held power, that silence lingered in the boardroom like smoke. No one moved for a while, not even to pretend. The lights above buzzed quietly, and the late evening light stretched across the polished floor like long shadows that refused to disappear. Helena was the first to crack. Her heels clicked against the tile as she shoved her chair back and stood. "I hope you're proud," she spat, not even looking at me. "You burned everything." She grabbed her bag without another word and stormed out. No goodbye, no glance back, just anger in motion. Anton muttered something under his breath, cowardly, half-hearted, then followed her, shoulders hunched, steps heavy like guilt was strapped to his ankles. Darius stayed behind. His face was pale, almost blank. He didn't speak, didn't argue. He just sat there, staring at the grain of the table like it held all the answers he never dared to ask. I didn't speak to him either. What was left to say? I gathered my things slowly. My breath was steady, but my body ached in places I didn't know could carry tension. My hand brushed against the wooden pen on the table. I picked it up, turning it in my fingers. It was warm, maybe from Lucien's grip, maybe from the way the day had burned through me. I held it tightly. Lucien had offered to walk me out, but I told him no. I needed the space. I needed this moment. Alone. I stepped out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind me like the final punctuation to a chapter I never thought I'd finish. The office was quiet now. Most of the staff had gone home, and the only sounds were the faint humming of the air conditioning and the muted rhythm of the city far below. As I made my way toward the elevator, I passed the framed family portraits hanging on the walls, old press clippings, awards, fake smiles captured in forced stillness. My face was always in the background, if I was even in them at all. I reached the window at the end of the hall instead of turning toward the elevators. The view of the Houston skyline was wide and clear, dusk bleeding into the horizon like watercolor. The city didn't care who signed what deal, who got erased, who came out on top. It just kept going. And I stood there, with the pen in my hand, finally still. They used to laugh when I stayed late to fix their mess. Our little intern, Anton once called me. I'd been part owner of the company for years. I thought about all the times they'd overlooked me, not just in meetings, but in moments that should have mattered more, the birthdays they forgot, the holidays where my chair was mysteriously missing. The way I'd always been the one to adjust my tone, shrink my presence, soften my intelligence so someone else could feel tall beside me. I remembered the jokes. You're not leadership material. Stay in your lane, sweetheart. Don't make a scene, Venora. It's just business. But it had never been just business. It had been personal every step of the way. And somehow, I had survived it all. No, more than that. I had risen. Lucian didn't choose me because I was the smartest in the room, though I knew I was. He didn't sign that deal because of the documents alone. He chose me because I never begged. I never folded. And I knew when to speak. That pen in my hand. It wasn't just a family heirloom. It was proof that I had seen something they hadn't, that I paid attention while they postured. That silence, when used with precision, could slice cleaner than any insult. I whispered to no one in particular, just to the skyline before me. I am no longer invisible. I didn't need them to applaud. I didn't need them to understand. Because now, I understood myself. The woman they had tried to erase was the one holding the legacy they wanted so badly to claim. The deal was done. The power shift was sealed. And no amount of spin behind closed doors would rewrite what had just happened in front of witnesses and ink. But it didn't feel like victory, not in the way I imagined it might. It felt like standing on a battlefield after the dust settled. You're breathing. You're standing. But the air still carries the weight of what it cost you. Winning doesn't heal the wound. It only proves you were bleeding for a reason. I slid the pen into my bag and finally turned away from the window. As I stepped into the elevator, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not even sad. Just free. And freedom, I was learning, doesn't always come with cheers and balloons. Sometimes it comes in quiet exits, in whispered truths, in long overdue moments of standing your ground. That night, as I walked out into the parking lot under the amber glow of streetlights, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't need to. What would you have done if the very people meant to protect you tried to erase you? Would you have walked away or stayed to fight?